Good afternoon. How's everyone? Good. I want to start by saying thank you for attending this session and tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Daniel Savage. I'm a program manager. I work in the System Center product group, primarily focused on the operations manager component. And specifically, I spend most of my time working on what we do with application monitoring. So welcome to this session. This session is a System Center 2012 Operations Manager, an overview of what's new. In this session, I'm going to take you through the major investments we've made in the Operations Manager product in this release. I want to spend most of the time in demos with the aim of really showing you what we've done so you can actually reduce MTTR. By that, I mean showing you the investments across the stack so you can get greater visibility, more insight into your applications and services, from the network stack right up to the application code running within your environment. So before we start, let's just look at a brief history of the Operations Manager product. Can I ask, show of hands, how many actually have been using 2012 already? Can't see for the lights. A few of you. Using 2007 R2? Most of you. Anyone still using MOM 2005? Good. I'll come and find you after. So if we look at the history of Operations Manager, we really started out with the release MOM 2005. There was a release before that, but really MOM 2005 stands out. This is really where we're monitoring servers and the workload running on those servers, and really just understanding the state of those particular workloads. With the release of Ops Manager 2007, we call this a revolutionary release because we went from really thinking about services and the health associated with services rather than just thinking about servers themselves. So we looked at how you could stitch an application together and monitor the health of a website talking to a database and creating a model around those things. With 2007 R2, we recognized that not all environments are homogeneous, and we need to support those heterogeneous, and providing support across our Unix and Linux environments as well. We also started introducing more concepts around, okay, how do we get information out to the business owners of applications and services with the introduction of SLA monitoring. And 2012, what we're really here to talk about today, is what we have this term called 360 monitoring, which I'll refer to today. This is really where we're looking at everything that can constitute to monitoring your application, from the network to the application, and providing that visibility across the whole stack. But not just providing the visibility across the stack, but providing the visibility to those people who need it. So we have major investments in this 2012 release related to network monitoring, related to application monitoring, both on .NET and Java, plus a new set of UI infrastructure that allows you to create rich visualizations around that. We've also made significant improvements in the management infrastructure of System Center 2012 as well, which we really think allows you to reduce the total cost of ownership and how you run your environment for 2012. So that's just a brief history. So what are we going to talk about today? Actually, before I get into the agenda, let's just talk a little bit about System Center 2012. Operations Manager is obviously one component that constitutes the whole System Center suite that covers it across these three main aspects. First of all, in the application management space, from being able to provision your applications in a common way using service templates and VMM, being able to delegate self-service control using App Controller to manage applications across both your public and private clouds, and to be able to monitor them via Operations Manager. We have service delivery and automation components. So our orchestrator, what was previously called a Palace, allow you to do runbook automation and automate your processes within your environment. And then Service Manager, really providing that business process layer on top of the System Center suite. And then we have Infrastructure Management, typically what has been our bread and butter investments, Virtual Machine Manager, Operations Manager, providing monitoring of your servers and infrastructure, Configuration Manager, and then lastly DPM for providing backup and site recovery services. So what we're focusing on today are the two components, the one component, Operations Manager, that fits across these two places, application management and infrastructure management. So our agenda today does look like this. We think about it as this 360 view. So the way I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to talk about the infrastructure monitoring, what we've done in the network layer to provide that visibility into what's going on below your servers. Is the network affecting your applications and services? I'll also talk about the reduced TCO and the investments we've made there. Then I'm going to talk about application monitoring. I'm going to talk about the investments we've made to get insight into your applications without the requirement to do any complex authoring through MPs. I'll talk about how we use synthetic transactions from inside and outside your data center to understand your application availability. And then to bring it all together, I'll show you how, through this new UI and this new dashboard infrastructure, we've created a set of consistent UX experiences that expand both our thick console, our web console, and SharePoint to provide that visualization that you can make available to whoever wants to view it. So let's get straight in, and we'll start getting to some demos in a minute. So let's start with network device monitoring. So in System Center 2012, actually, in 2007 R2, we did have some kind of out-of-band network device monitoring, very simple. In 2012, we've incorporated some technology from EMC that allows us to provide out-of-the-box discovery, monitoring, dashboards, and reporting. What we've done there is been able to provide a simplified method to discover your network, get that monitoring data about all the devices that exist, and provide reporting. We've normalized that information we collect as well. Lots of different devices provide information in different ways. What we've done with our network monitoring, regardless of the device that you're monitoring, to be able to view memory utilization, processor utilization, standard across that in familiar operations manager views. The next point is really core to why it's important to monitor this layer, is can I understand the effect of my network on my applications and servers? So through the investments we made in 2012, we've allowed you to understand the connections between your servers and your network as well. Multi-protocol support, so support for SNMP v1, 2, and 3, IPv6 and v4. And extensibility, so the ability to author custom workflows to be able to monitor your network devices. So with that, I'll jump straight in and show you a demo. And I'm going to start, so this is my environment here. Sorry for the slow here. Everyone see that okay? So I'm in my Windows computers view here. What I'm going to start with is understanding how my Windows computers are connected to my network. So I can go from here, and you'll see here on the right-hand side under my navigation, I have what's called the Network Vicinity Dashboard. If I open this up, it'll take a few seconds. See if I select the right server. This will load in a second. Here we have my network, my Windows server here, and I can see what it's connected to. So that's the first part of understanding. Does my server problem exist due to a connection on the network? So here we're beginning to see some of the visualizations we provide around that. So I can navigate around this dashboard view. I get details of the devices they're connected to. I can click on the connections as well and understand the properties of those then. But I can go deeper. Say I want to understand more about this device here. So I can click on here, and we can see we can go further. I've got this network node dashboard on the navigation pane. So let me select that. Let this load. So again, here, we get the vicinity view of this device with the connections. What I can do is I can expand out the number of hops to understand more about what my network topology looks like. Select that. While that's loading, what you can see is I have rich KPIs about the particular device I'm looking at, so understanding its availability today, yesterday, across the past week and months. Here we see this topology view here. We can see that we do have a particular connection that looks like it's down, so I'm beginning to understand the health of my network and what's going on. What I can do within this view as well, I can also select Show Computers, which is going to list all the computers that are connected to my network devices. Scrolling down further, for that particular device, I see all the instance-related details. We found we're getting good feedback from this when IT pros talking to network admins saying, okay, we appear to have some visibility into a problem, being able to provide the instance details and the properties. We have some metrics around this device, so the average response time is processor utilization. And then lastly, at the bottom we have two things. We have the ports on this device. What you can see here is that the state is only shown for the ports that are active. We don't monitor inactive ports. You can, if you want, select a port and enable port monitoring if you wanted to enable that. At the bottom, we have alerts as well. So if there was a problem with this device, I would be getting alerts, and they would show up in the screen below. So all in one view, very rich information about that device. But I can go further. So let me drill down into the network interface dashboard. Here, I'm getting the traffic that I can see across that. Again, the bits sent and received, packets. If there's any errors, again, I've got the instance details and the properties. I've got its utilization, and then if there was any alerts, I would get that on the bottom. So these are just the dashboards we provide out of the box of monitoring. So once you've configured and discovered your network devices, you're going to get this rich information provided around your network layer. We also have, if I go back to the main, close these windows. So here we see some kind of standard operations manager view, so I can look at a state view, understand the status of all my devices. We also discover things like VLANs, HSRP groups, and we do provide standard performance-based views. So for any device, again, here what we see is we've normalized the performance counter so you can do comparisons across whatever device from any manufacturer within OM. So that's the data we provide, but how is this configured? So let me go across to the administration pane and show you how easy it is to get that visibility into your network layer. So in our discovery wizard, we have network devices. This has been updated for 2012. And what I'll show you, if I come out of here, I'll show you a discovery rule I've already created. So this is discovering one of our labs back in Redmond. So here we have our rule. We have the server that's going to run the discovery. And what we have at the bottom is a concept called pools. I have some slides on this a little later to understand what pools are. It's basically how we provide high availability of monitoring devices agently, such as network devices. So we specify these details. Then we support two different types of discovery. Explicit discovery, as in you input the list of devices you want to discover, and we'll go in and find them. Or a recursive discovery, whereas you provide what we would call a seed device, where we would go to the seed device, read its ARP table, enumerate the devices, and then go discover everything we have there. Here we can provide the run-as accounts. So we get a lot of feedback that the network admins want to provide secure connections to monitoring their devices. What you can provide in here is those run-as accounts or the SNMP account details for discover these devices. You can put multiple in here as well. So if I'm running a discovery set across 100 network devices and I'm providing 4, maybe 5 community strings, we will go through each one and try against each device until we get the one that's actually authenticated, and that's the one we'll mark to use for monitoring. So you don't have to go and do separate discoveries for them. You can specify them all in here. So here we have the list. So this is a list I've inputted of all the devices I want to discover. You can import from file, add, edit, and then we have a set of advanced discovery settings within here. So once I've specified that, the last thing I have to specify is how often I want this discovery to run. Sorry, question? Sorry, I can't hear. So the question was, is this out of the box or do you need a management pack? This is all out of the box functionality with 2012. So I can see with the lights where you had your hand up. So the last thing we have to do is schedule the network discovery. So we can either run the discovery manually, meaning you can come in and do that, or we can specify on a set day or time of the week on which the discovery to run. And that's it. So there we have our network monitoring features, so the rich visualizations and very simple way for discovering those devices out of the box. It is out of the box functionality. The management packs are come and loaded, so you can get this functionality, and we will automatically stitch your servers to the network devices you find, so you can create those visualizations as well. Let me go back to the deck. So let's move on. So if you're using Operations Manager 2007, are any of you using to manage Unix or Linux devices? A few of you, a couple of you. So we introduced that in 2007 R2. What are we delivering in 2012? So again, we took a lot of feedback. Unix admins didn't seem to want to provide people using Operations Manager with root access to monitor their servers. So we've done a lot of work to think about the security and how we monitor the Unix and Linux environments by providing support for SSH and for sudo elevation. Monitoring via resource pools. Before, you used to specify a management server to say, go and monitor these Unix and Linux devices. If that management server went offline, and in fact, you could not see what was going on in your Unix and Linux. So it was a single point of failure. Using resource pools, which I'll take you through later, we've been able to create high availability for monitoring Unix and Linux as well. We're expanding the distributions we need to support, so support for Red Hat 6, 7.1. With 2012, with SP1 coming later this year, we will support CentOS and Ubuntu as well. And lastly, some new command shell templates. So the ability to take regular command shells you would run in Unix and map that into Operations Manager-based events and rules, which I'll show you in a second. So let's go back to the demo. I'm going to switch machines here. And I want to show you two things. If I change that. There we go. So I wanted to show you two things in this part of the demo. First of all, how to discover your Unix and Linux devices. And secondly, how you can use these new authoring templates to use the new Unix and Linux command shells. So first of all, again, we're in the administration pane here, and we're in the discovery wizard that I showed you. There we go. Not going to change. Okay. So here we are in the administration pane, again, in the discovery wizard. So we have Unix and Linux, as I said, was introduced in 2007 R2. Here, we can specify our discovery criteria. So the servers we wanted to discover or an IP address range. I'm just going to put in a server to discover here. The port we want to discover it on. How we want to discover within that scope, whether it be all the computers or only the ones that we've actually have the bits and the agent on. Then we have the credentials. So this is what's new in System Center 2012. So the ability to use SSH, or if the account does not have privileged access, the ability to use sudo or su elevation to elevate there. So increasing the ability to control the access for discovering your servers on Unix and Linux. And then lastly, we have the ability to discover via a resource pool. So the resource pool will provide that monitoring across a set of management servers so that we're able to provide high availability for Unix and Linux monitoring. So that's the discovery aspects. So let me go back and into monitoring. So with 2007 R2, we had these Unix and Linux templates. So management pack templates, for those that aren't familiar, are really wizard-driven experiences to simplify the process of setting up monitoring without requiring any complex management pack authoring. So we had Unix and Linux in 2007. These have been improved in 2012. But what I want to show you here today, if I go to rules, is how we can use command shell from Unix and Linux to create rules in Operations Manager. So I'm going to create a new rule. What you'll see here is we have the support for Unix and Linux shell commands. For example, if I wanted to create an event-based rule, But here what I'm going to do is use a probe base to create a collection rule from a Unix and Linux shell command. So I'm going to select that, save it in a particular management pack, and click Next. So here we give it a rule name. So we're going to look at net connections as the rule name. The rule target. So I'm going to target all my Unix and Linux computers with this rule, whether it's enabled or not, how often we need it to run, and here we can specify the command. Now you can specify any shell command supported on Unix and Linux here. The one I'm using for the demo purposes is to enumerate the number of connections and then return that as a number. What account? So again, we're increasing the control you have over the rules that can be used on Unix and Linux machines, so you could specify a run as profile here. Click Next. So here we have the regular expression support. So to format that data coming back from the shell command, what I have here is just looking for a particular number from the standard out of the command that is run. And click Next. And here you would give your counter a name. So we could say connections. That's that. Connections. And then an instance name, for example, underscore total. So it looks the same as every other counter we have in there. And then the values we're getting from that standard out would be mapped into a performance rule. I could click Create now, and that rule would then be populated. So that's obviously a simple example of how we can create Unix and Linux event-based rules or performance counters using the support for Linux command shell. I'll cancel out of that. Don't think this thing likes me. There we go. Nope. I'm going to give it a second. Okay. Alrighty. So let's move on. So through the last two demos, I talked about a concept of resource pools. So I want to spend a little bit of time taking you through what we've done in that area. And it's really what we've called topology simplification. This is really how we termed the investments we were making based on feedback from 2007 R2. So what are we delivering with topology simplification? So first of all, if you're familiar with the RMS in 2007, so we've removed that in 2012, based on a lot of feedback around how hard it was to kind of cluster and configure. The fact that it certainly would be a single point of failure if it wasn't clustered. So we've removed that and we've created a federated set of management servers. What we call these is a management server pool. So this pools concept is what allows us to provide Unix and Linux monitoring, high availability, network monitoring availability. So we can actually create pools of management servers. So we have what's called an all management servers pool out the box. And you can create additional pools yourself for doing specific aspects of monitoring. So the reason we had the RMS in the first place was when we introduced the context of the concepts of monitoring services and monitoring their particular components. We needed a place to determine the health of those. We also needed a place that would determine how groups were configured. So if I had a group of servers or a group of websites and I wanted to apply monitoring, we couldn't have the individual agents determine that. So the RMS was introduced to solve those problems. So what we're doing in 2012 is the services that provided those functions, we're federating them across all the management servers, and we're moving some of that logic down to the database. That allows us to provide a scale-out architecture across our management servers. With the topology simplification, so people who have written management packs in the past may have targeted certain workflows, or through certain creation of certain monitoring, workflows would have been targeted to the RMS. So we have created this RMS emulator rule that moves across the management servers, and this ensures backwards compatibility. And I'll talk a little bit about this in a further slide on how we preserved some of your existing investments, but that does mean that management packs that were written for 2007 R2 will be fully compatible moving forward towards 2012. So let's just visualize what these topology simplification investments look like. So if you take a standard architecture with 2012, you may be rolling out, okay, I want to monitor a few servers, understand the capabilities of OM. You start with this, one management server, your databases that support it. You notice that the data warehouse is listed on there. The data warehouse is a required component for 2012. Through our dashboarding investments we've made, we take a lot of the rich data that's stored in the data warehouse and visualize that in the console as well. So that's a required component. So as I said, you have a management server monitoring a few agents and you want to start scaling that out, do some more with it. So here, in this scenario, what you have is all those workflows that were typically run by the RMS, dependency monitors to understand the state of components running on your servers, the availability calculations, things like notifications, so being able to email someone that an alert has happened, and then group calculation. When you add a management server to monitor a different set of agents, or monitor more agents, what we will do is we will rebalance those workflows across those two management servers. So again, you would scale out, adding more agents, we're going to rebalance those workloads again. So we're really federating out the work of what used to happen with the RMS across what that blue box now displays as be our all management servers resource pool. So what happens when a management server fails? Well, first of all, if you configured primary and backups for your agents, they're going to start reporting to their secondary management server, and those workflows that were running on that management server will get moved across to a different machine. So that's obviously providing you high availability, the ability to scale out. But the other aspect it provided you with is this ability to provide agentless monitoring in a high availability way. So here we have, if we look at the topology, we have devices such as network devices or Unix and Linux servers, or it could be watchers that run synthetic transactions. They're all reporting previously to a single management server. So with 2012, what I can do is I can create a pool of management servers, and I say I want that pool to manage these set of devices. That means I get high availability, so if one of my management servers goes offline, that I will continue to be able to monitor those aspects. So if one goes offline, then the devices fail over. So let's just talk a little bit about some of the investments that were in 2007 R2. I put this slide up here because I think even though I don't cover a lot of this content in this session, it's important to understand the investments that you have made in 2007 R2 certainly do carry over into 2012. I mean, obviously, we've certainly been what we call the best in class for monitoring servers, OS, and the workloads on there with the management packs we provide for monitoring things like Exchange and SharePoint. These existing management packs, the existing management packs that you have authored, will carry over to 2012 with no changes required. Things like ACS or AEM, they will continue to work in 2012. There have been small kind of tweaks here and there, but we haven't introduced any major functionality. The reporting and data warehouse infrastructure, that still exists. The data warehouse, as I said, is now a required component. Synthetic transactions and templates, gateway servers. We've made some changes to the PowerShell commandlets to simplify how they're used. SLAs, Active Directory. All of these things that you would have invested in as part of your 2007 infrastructure carry completely forward with 2012. Sure. Sorry, I can't. So converted management packs from MOM 2005 to 2007, will they still work on 2012? Yes, I believe so, yes. It's actually, our best practice recommendation is that you should think about updating them. I believe going forward, they require on the backwards compatibility MP that I believe we're going to get rid of. But yes, they will. If they work on 2007, they will work on 2012. But you should think of maybe kind of refactoring them. So, to answer your question, sorry, question here. So the question is, if root management servers, and how do we behave if one of them gets isolated? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the question is, so the scenario is, if I reiterate, is if I have using management server pools rather than root management server, I have a management server in one site and management server in another site, what happens between them? So actually the recommendation is that management servers should be located in a place that has low latency between them and the database. So in essence, management server pools cannot go cross-site. So if you wanted to do cross-site monitoring, you've either got to use connected management groups, or you've got to have a sufficient latency between the sites that we would support the management server pool. But typically, site to site, I mean, if the latencies are high, I would not recommend that you try and have pools that span site to site. To answer your question? Correct. Yes. Yeah. So on the last point he made was that for multiple site monitoring, the recommendation is to have multiple management groups. Yeah. Did I say a question up here? Mm-hmm. So back to the previous comment. So you're saying the backwards compatibility. Sorry, my mistake on the previous question. Isn't there in 2012? So for those MPs, let me follow up actually offline with you, because I'm not sure if that management pack is just removed but can't be added. I think it's removed by default. But we can take it offline. But it's certainly, I would think, if you are using anything that relies on backwards compatibility, now is the time to think about getting them into a 2007 native format to move forward to 2012. Sorry, question? Sorry, can you... So the question is, would you recommend upgrading a gateway server to 2012 to report to a 2007 R2 environment? And is that just through getting the 2007 upgraded to 2012 as part of the upgrade process, or what's the scenario for upgrading the... Yeah. So I would still use 2007 if you're not in the process of upgrading your management group to 2012. Okay. So the question was, can you have a 2012 gateway server report to use a 2012 gateway server to report to a 2007 management group? Actually, I mean, our agents through an upgrade process is you can do a side-by-side upgrade, as in I have a 2007 management group and I stand up a 2012. I can upgrade all my agents to 2012. They will report to the R2 management group and the 2012 management group. The gateway server is, in essence, just an agent, so it will work. But if you're not doing it in the context of an upgrade, I wouldn't recommend it. Make sense? Okay. Sure. So the question, if it was related to connectors. So if I have a connector connecting to my route management server, would it need to connect to a specific management server? Depends on the connector, but yes, in essence, you would have to connect it to a specific management server that you would specify for the connector, unless the connector had some kind of logic in which you could install the connector across all management servers and have something do the federation. But we certainly don't provide any support out the box for that. Okay. So I'll move on, and we can get to more questions at the end. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the application monitoring investment. So we spent the first part of the session really talking about the infrastructure layer, talking about network monitoring, talking about how we've reduced TCO. I want to talk about the major investments we've now made across the application layer. Obviously, the servers we have in our environment really exist for one purpose only, to provide services and applications out. So we wanted to provide much more rich insight into these applications. So what are we delivering in 2012? So availability monitoring via rich synthetic transactions. Now, we had synthetic transactions in the past. What we've added, if you saw the keynote yesterday or attended other sessions, we've added an additional service which will come with SP1, which is called Global Service Monitor. That's the ability to understand the availability of your applications and services from an external perspective. So Microsoft, we have built a service, runs in Azure, and uses a set of globally distributed points of presence. So you can use your management group, author synthetic transactions, and run them on our infrastructure to get a third-party perspective of the availability of your applications. Last mile monitoring and the performance and reliability. So through the acquisition of AviCode, we've incorporated that technology into Operations Manager as a first-class citizen. So we can do last mile monitoring. What I mean by that is we can instrument the browser, instrument the application so that when it runs in a browser, we can gather information from the user's perspective as to how your application is performing. We also have the ability to monitor from the server side as well. So get the performance and reliability of your applications running on the server itself through the .NET framework. And then rich diagnostics. So we want to obviously get the data around availability, performance, and reliability. But when we have a problem in our application, can we understand where it goes wrong? And I'll walk you through a demonstration of this in a second. Again, this is out-of-the-box functionality. This won't require you to author any management packs or do anything complex to set it up. And then we have a set of dashboards that support this. And then recently we announced integration with TFS. So we really think about this move to the DevOps lifecycle. So how do we get information around application problems and how they're running in production and provide that information back to developers who can work in their familiar tools like Visual Studio and TFS to be able to kind of, as I said at the start of the session, reduce that MTTR. So what are the perspectives of monitoring? So we talked about this 360. So this is kind of to really point this out. So we're right at the center of your world really is your application. So your application is a set of code running across your servers. Being able to understand how that code is running, whether it's performant, whether it's reliable. Then if we move out one step from that, we've got what's called what we term the first mile. So that's really exercising your application stack, using synthetic transactions and agents running within your infrastructure. This is the same support we had in 2007 R2. What we add in 2012 is the mid-mile perspective for you. So the ability for you to understand the health of your applications using Global Service Monitor, so a service provided by Microsoft. What you actually see on the screen is a link. This Global Service Monitor, if you're using 2012, is available for you to use today. All it requires is you go to the Connect site and sign up. The link is there, connect.microsoft.com/site1286. If you fill out the nomination survey, you'll be sent an email with how to access the service and the management packs required. So if you are using 2012 and you're interested in this, we'd really like you to kind of trial this out so we can take your feedback before the service goes live later this year. And then the last mile. So understanding, getting rich information from the clients themselves. So understanding when your users are actually having a problem and getting information about that. So let's look at that in the demo. I've got to go back to this machine. Nope. All right. Okay. So, anyone let me know if it changes? Okay, so let's take a standard application. Now, I mean, if you were in our application management across private cloud yesterday, you would have seen some of these aspects of the demo. I'm going to go a little bit deeper today and show you more around how some of this monitoring is configured. So here I have a standard application. So it's an application. It could be a consumer-facing application. It could be an internal line of business application. It's deployed via the browser for users to use it. And what you can see, if I kind of run a few refreshes on that, you'll see it's taken a pretty long time to load. Now, the application could be available, it's up, but we're seeing that, I mean, users accessing this site are going to get frustrated with the performance of it. So if we think about those various aspects of monitoring we talked about in the slide, we talked about the availability, we talked about performance and reliability, and then we talked about diagnostics. What I want to walk you through is how you can configure each of these aspects and then bring them all together. So if we start with availability, what we have in 2012, again, I'm going to go back to the management pack templates space, which is really the easiest way for you to configure monitoring through our wizard-driven experiences. So we have a new template here called Web Application Availability Monitoring. So if you're using 2007 R2, you would have had web application monitoring. That template has been renamed Web Application Transaction Monitoring, and that functionality still exists. So Web Application Availability Monitoring is new. And here we have, if I take you through the one I've created for my Dinner Now application. So we've got 3 simple steps we need to walk through to set up monitoring. The first thing we need to do is specify what we want to monitor. So when we're monitoring an application via synthetic transactions, what we're monitoring is we're monitoring for those critical paths within our application. So here we can specify those set of endpoints we want to monitor. So whether it be my home page, or I want to monitor a search page with a query string, or a different type of page, we can specify all these endpoints within here. So what we're doing with this is we're saying, I know that my users spend most of their time accessing this site, so I want to understand whether it's available or not. The next part we provide is where you want to monitor that from. So here we have the locations that are available via GSM currently, Global Service Monitor. So these are the points of presence running on the Microsoft network that you can use as to get third-party validation of whether your applications are running. I can also monitor from internal locations as well. So I can get that first mile and the mid-mile from the one experience. Let me just add an internal node here. And I go to View and Validate Tests. What this result shows me is, in fact, the effective configuration that's going to be applied. So this is all the URLs I entered, crossed with all the pop locations we have, and it shows me how many tests we're going to monitoring and where they're monitoring from. What I can do here is I can actually, at this stage, run a test and validate whether that's going to be successful or not. So this is something, again, that's new in 2012. Previously, in 2007 R2, we would run that test from the root management server. Now, if you have agents located around your infrastructure, you can go and push down a test and run it from the agent that you're going to provide the monitoring from to really understand what data you're going to get back as you're setting up the monitoring. So here I can see the test ran, what the status code was, what the response time. So I can use this information to build up the configuration for my monitoring. And then the configuration that we have. So here we have a simple one-page template that allows us to specify information related to the configuration. So like, what is the frequency? What would be the test timeout if we wanted the test to stop after a period of time? I can specify alerting criteria and warning criteria. So over the transaction response time, so say if I know that this application shouldn't take longer than 3 seconds, I want to generate an alert when it does. Obviously checking on the status code, and then content match as well. Now content match is key if you have applications that are being data driven, so that you could actually test for a piece of text being returned to the screen, so you're actually validating your application stack. You can do that within here as well. Then we have the performance counters you can collect. We can evaluate the health of resources. So as in, if I have an image on a page that has been served from an external provider, if that image throws like a 404 not found, we would actually generate a state for that, so you could actually alert on that behavior as well. We support get and post, and you can put in custom headers there, say if you wanted to exclude this type of monitoring from your IIS logs, for example. So that's the configuration. Let's look at the monitoring. Give me a second. Let's look at the monitoring associated with that when it finishes saving. So we'll go. So what we have we're in the monitoring pane now, and under application monitoring, we have a various set of views. Then we have the web application availability monitoring, which corresponds with the template we have. I can go to this dashboard view. Give that a second. This is busy. Okay. Let me try that again. Okay. I was too impatient. That's fine. So it came back. So let's look at the monitoring that's configured with that. So here again, we're talking about the availability monitoring aspect. So the first view that we have for the dinner now configuration I had is we have how am I performing from those various locations? Am I available? So when this loads, give it a second. Okay. Still loading. Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. Let me just try one more time. There we go. Just a little slow. So what you can see here, if I zoom in, so we see the graphical representation of all the points of presence that we're monitoring our application from. I can highlight these, and you'll see at the bottom I get more information about what's going on. So I can determine when was the last time the test ran, what its response time was, and whether it's healthy or not. So you can see I have a problem with the application running from the London location. So here I'm getting that external perspective. But more importantly, I'm getting that external perspective right into where all my other monitoring is provided from as well. So that's the availability monitoring. So what we want to be able to do is tie that together. I'm monitoring the servers that this application is running on. So I want to be able to understand the performance and reliability of that application as well. So I'm going to go back to authoring. So we have that Dinner Now application. Again, what we have in 2012 is this another set of templates for monitoring .NET applications. So without instrumentation, I can monitor that application and get rich information around the performance and exceptions that could happen. So if we look at the configuration for that, so actually, that's the wrong one. So a very similar experience that we just saw in the previous wizard. What we want to monitor, so what we have in this list here, so is when I install Operations Manager and I install the IIS Management Pack, the IIS Management Pack goes out and discovers all the various .NET components that exist across my environment. What I can do during the wizard is I can select just the components I want to monitor, so which are specific to my application. I can also group the monitoring as well. So maybe I go and discover Dinner Now running across staging and production environments. So I can actually just group together the servers that formulate my production group and monitor them. So we provide the components. Here I'm monitoring my Dinner Now presentation tier and my Dinner Now, my business tier as well. Then we provide two different aspects of how we monitor those applications. First of all, the client side. I mentioned this briefly earlier. This is how we monitor how the application actually performs within the browser itself. So again, simply by turning this on, what happens is when the application when the web server serves up that application, we intercept the HTML that has been passed down. We inject a piece of JavaScript which provides that monitoring so we can capture performance and exceptions that run on the client itself. So that's client side. We simply check that. And then on server side as well, again, I have two simple checkboxes, nothing complex to author, that allows me to get performance capture when we have performance violations. So when a call is made or a function is called that takes longer than a specific value, we will generate an event, and that we can generate alert across that as well. So here we have the threshold. We specify defaults out of the box. You can tune them accordingly. And with both of these settings, we can be more advanced. So we can go and configure the thresholds. If you have specific namespaces or methods within your .NET application you want to monitor, you can specify them here. We can specify the different types of monitoring you want to be able to do. So security, connectivity. So if I have a call that's made where a resource isn't found, or it throws an authentication error, we can capture them as well. The various monitors and the thresholds. I won't go too much more into this. There's a session, I think it's at 2 o'clock today, application performance monitoring in 2012 by my colleague Pei. I advise you to go to that. She goes deeper into what you can do with this particular set of monitoring. And then again, on the client side, we have the ability to tune the thresholds and provide the information there. So that's the configuration for the .NET monitoring. So what I've configured now, I've configured the availability aspects of my monitoring, and I've configured the performance reliability. What I really want to be able to do now is bring these together, so when I have a problem with my application, I get all the information in one place to be able to determine what's going on. So through distributed applications, so this, again, a concept that exists in 2007 R2. In 2012, we've created this new template, which is a .NET 3-tier application. So that allows, we know that there are specific patterns of how applications exist. Typically, they have a front end, a middle tier, and a database. And then we monitor them via synthetic transactions. So we've created this template that allows you really easily to discover and stitch together your applications, and then utilize the views we provide you out of the box to understand what's going on. So that's the new template. I have a distributed application already created for my Dinner Now. If I look at the output of that by doing view diagram, so here we see the various tiers of my application, my business tier, the client perspective. So this is the point where I'm monitoring the points of presence. So you see here I have my London one and the various healthy nodes that we have. And we have our presentation tier as well. So this is the .NET monitoring actually running on the server itself. What you'll notice here from a roll-up perspective is that we only roll up availability as being read of the application when a synthetic transaction is failing. What that really means is if you configured synthetic transactions, that's your measure of what your availability is, and it's how you measure your SLA. If a performance exception happens within the application and trips a threshold, it doesn't necessarily mean you're violating your SLA. So we'll throw a warning there, but something for you to go and investigate. So we've done a lot of work within this template and the roll-up to really make it easy so you can get out-of-the-box value from your applications. So I'll go back to monitoring now, and we'll look at the output of that. So this view here, under applications, you may have seen earlier. This is something that's coming in SP1 of System Center 2012. This is really the all-up view of your applications and the associated KPIs. This is driven by the distributed application template I just showed you. And it allows you, for all the applications that you created from there, understand their response time, understand their availability, their performance and reliability. And these are indexes, so you can get that first glance look and understand whether you have problems or not. Here, we will provide sample SLAs out the box. So you can use our service level tracking features in R2 and get these visualizations here. There's a second dashboard that we provide as well, called an application summary dashboard. So just like the network dashboards, we're providing high levels, high density sets of information, and you can drill down to get more. So here for my Dinner Now application, and that loads, we can see we get the response time coming from our external tests. We get the response time for the components, the monitored requests per second. You see these will change based on the components I'm looking at. I have the instances, so if I had multiple instances of this component are running across various servers, it would be visualized here. And then at the bottom, we have the alerts associated with this application. So this is really providing an application focus around all the monitoring we provide. So now I can look at these warning events. So one of the things I talked about when we talked about 360 monitoring was the four main aspects that we have. Availability, as in, is it up? Is it performing, as in, is it doing what it's supposed to do in the time I expect? Is it reliable, meaning am I getting the correct data, or is my application throwing exceptions? And then the last piece of that 360 monitoring is the diagnostics. Can I get to the root cause of a problem when something happens? So when we go, in the start of the demo, I showed that, yeah, okay, we have my application is performing slow. So a fairly common problem. So now I can use this workflow, say, I have got a warning. Let's look at what's generated from that. So let me open up this alert. So here we have my alert, and I can jump from here into our application diagnostics console. Let me try that again. That should be the one. See if I can generate a new one. Okay, clicking the wrong one. So this is the client-side monitoring. So I've been given an alert that tells me there was a client performance exception. So this is the instrumentation we provided as the application was streamed out to the user. This runs on the browser, and we capture information. So what you can see here is this is now beginning to tell me where my problem exists. Okay, so we see a breakdown of what happens when that application call was made. So we see that 92% of the time was actually taken for the server side to actually return the application to me. If it was due to how long it took peripherals to come down, for example, I had someone made an update to my application that referred to an image that was oversized. It would show down here and say, okay, they actually took this long to load the peripherals. Here, we get a breakdown of that information as well. We also capture breakdowns such as how long was AJAX taking and what those various calls would be. So we get this rich information. So now I know that the problem now exists on the server side. So not only do we capture this information, we stitch it together to provide a logical workflow so you can walk through. So if I go to distributed chains here and look at this transaction. So here what we have is we have the web tier, the client tier calling the server tier. So we see where the time has been taken. So this default.aspx in the middle on computer web, that is the server-side monitoring. So we know that we've captured the event there. And what we can do is we can actually walk this chain and go find out more information. So now I'm getting into what's actually happened when I make that call to the application. So we have the various calls here, and I begin to start troubleshooting what's going on. Again, I can follow it further, and we see that we have this call on the business tier on my web service. If I expand that out, right down to this particular SQL call. So we see here that SQL call has taken 4 seconds. So if you saw that that's how long my application was taken. So what I've done through this workflow, through availability monitoring, I've determined but I've got a performance issue. Through the client-side monitoring, I've determined that my users are being affected and where the problem exists. And now I've walked through to the particular SQL call, which you can see here, and how long that's taking. So this is now information I can package up and say, okay, hand this off to developer or whoever's looking after this application and say, I was able to capture this information about what's going on. So if we think about how that conversation may go, as part of it, it may be, okay, I've given you an application problem. The developer's likely to come back, well, it's probably a one-off. It probably won't happen again. What we do through our monitoring, if I open up this page here, we also capture similar events. So you can go back and say, well, actually, no, if I look at this is something that's happening consistently. I can see lots of events happening here. Developers, I would say, well, it's probably a problem with your environment then, probably to do with the resource utilization on your servers. At the same time as capturing the event, we also capture how the server was performing as well. So we capture during that time window. So now you can have a conversation to say, this is something that's happening a lot. My servers were fine at the same time. And here's a specific place where I see the application problem. So just briefly, that was the monitoring aspects we provide in 2012. I'll just briefly touch on the fact that with 2012 as well, we also cover the ability to monitor Java application servers running across both Windows and Unix as well. So under application monitoring, again, I referred to pay session application monitoring. She will cover more of this. But here we have monitoring of WebSphere. Here, this is running on a SUSE Linux Enterprise server. We provide various information about the applications and servers running on there. Very analogous to how the IIS management pack works. Okay, so switch back. I'm getting the hang of it now. Okay, so I talked a little bit about Java. As I said, go to the APM session later on today to get more information. This is just to give you an idea of what application servers we support across the various platforms. So then lastly, as part of the agenda we talked about, there's the 360 monitoring, which is obviously providing monitoring across the stack from the network up to the application code. What I want to talk about now is how we can visualize that data in multiple different forms so you can provide the information out to whoever needs it. So what do we provide out of the box in 2012? First of all, we provide a set of dashboards ourselves. So we've got the management group dashboard that shows you infrastructure and health. I'll show you in a second. We provide service level dashboards. We provide the map dashboards that I showed you. So whether or not you're using our global service monitor service, that map dashboard is available. You can actually assign locations using command shell, using commandlets to your own agents and visualize that using the dashboards as well. We integrate with SharePoint and Visio. We think about the workflow. Okay, I'm an administrator of OM, I have the data. I want to delegate some views out to someone, which I may use my web console for. And then I want to maybe publish that out to SharePoint as well. So these dashboards that I'm about to show you are available not just in this console here, but across our web console and in SharePoint as well. And then we have an easy way to create visualizations on the fly. So let's switch back. So let's first of all look at some of the dashboards we provide out the box. We provide 3 mechanisms for viewing this dashboarding infrastructure. One, we will provide them out the box, so our own dashboards, for example, the network monitoring. 2, some of our partners will ship management packs in their MPs. So, for example, I believe the SQL Server team are working on a management pack that will be specific to monitoring of SQL servers. And then thirdly, I'll show you that in a second, is how you can create your own dashboards. So here's just an example. These are new dashboards we have in 2012. This one's called our Management Group Health. We call it internally the coffee break dashboard. As an administrator of OM, I come in the morning, I look at this dashboard, and I make a decision of whether I can go for my coffee or not. We wanted to summarize how your OM infrastructure looks in a simple way. So we have the various functions and the various components. The idea being, if I get all green on this, I can go have my coffee. If not, I go and investigate what's going on. I have the various alerts associated with my infrastructure. And then what I have at the bottom is any kind of things I need to do with my environment. So the agent configuration, do I have any agents sitting in pending? What are my agent versions as well? So if I'm doing an upgrade and I'm tracking out how my infrastructure has been upgraded, I'll be able to see this information in here. The other one is the health trend. So understanding how your management group has been performing over time, particularly around your agent health. So are my agents staying up and being healthy? So great for the OM administrator to get an idea of the environment. So that's what we provide out the box. So and I'll just show you quickly how you would create a new dashboard. So here I am on the monitoring pane, do new dashboard view. We have a set of templates associated with it. I'm going to use the service level dashboard. This is one where you can create service levels and then create on-the-fly dashboards associated with them. So click Next, give it a name, my SLA dashboard. Click Next. The service levels I want to add, I've got a service level created that looks at my Windows servers and their availability. The duration is here. Now this is key because, as I mentioned before, the data warehouse is a required component. You can specify now, rather than having just 7 days worth of data available through your console, with the integration with the data warehouse, I can actually look at service levels across weeks and months within the dashboard infrastructure. And click Create. So that'll create that dashboard, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So there's my SLA dashboard, and it will enumerate my SLAs. There we go. So I have the various computers I'm monitoring, the various service level objectives or KPIs I have assigned to them. I can click through and I get more information. Not necessarily about the SLA dashboard, I was just showing the experience of how you can create these visualizations through the dashboard creation experience. So with that, that's pretty much it. We had some questions along the way. I'll happily take some questions now. We have 6 minutes left. Otherwise, I'll hang around and I'll take questions at the end. Thank you.